So when I was first starting out my career as a financial advisor, I started in a financial institution, a bank out in San Francisco. And many of the clients that were brought to me by my tellers or my new accounts people weren't really in a position to, for whatever reason, start a full-fledged financial planning relationship. And so the teller would bring them over to me, introduce them, and it would go something like, hey, Dan, this is Mr. Client. Mr. Client has $25,000 in his checking account, and I thought he might want to talk to you about some other options. And so we would sit down, and I would, of course, approach it the way I was trained from a consultative standpoint, right? So I would start out with, tell me about your goals. What is this money for? And many clients would not be super open, right? There wasn't a high level of trust. I was just some guy the teller had introduced them to. And so they would usually respond something like, I'd say, what is this money for? And they'd respond, I don't know. It's just money. And so then you just start going down the list of things that you're taught, right? Okay, well, let's try and figure out time horizon. Okay, well, when might you need it? I don't know, maybe tomorrow, maybe 50 years from now. And so now you think, okay, don't know what it's for. You might need it anytime between tomorrow and 50 years. And so now you just start throwing hand grenades, right? And you start to get a little frustrated. And then the client can also start to get a little frustrated at this point too. So you're like, well, might you use it for a house? Yeah, I might use it for a house or a car, or I might just spend it, or I might use it for retirement. So obviously at this point, it's starting to get a little frustrating for both the advisor and the client. So I have at this point, had a little presentation that is useful for starting out where these relationships start out a little bit more transactional. Hello and welcome to Valuability, a video and audio podcast for financial professionals, business owners, and anyone interested in financial planning, business, leadership, and personal development.
My name is Philip Simensen, and I'm joined by my partner, Danforth Fleak. In this episode, we're going to share a short presentation we call the investment triangle. Dan will walk you through how he would present this concept to clients and where it can lead. Not all clients are ready for a full consultative financial plan when you first meet them. This will give you a quick, easy way to start your relationship with that client and get an idea of how you can help them immediately. Through this, you can begin to build trust and hopefully work towards fulfilling and building a full financial plan.
You can find all of our episodes, both video and audio versions, on the web at value-ability.com. And of course, if you're watching us on YouTube, you can subscribe to our channel and click the bell to be notified for new episodes. Also, if you enjoy this video, please take a second to give us a quick like. It helps us out tremendously. We would also love to hear from you, either by commenting on this video, or you can find and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at value_ability.
Now, Dan, if I understand this correctly, this is not a financial planning based relationship, but this is one that you and I would call more of a product, the traditional based relationship.
Correct. Transactional, or, as I mentioned, I was working in a financial institution. And so, financial institution advising is a little bit different. You do end up getting some, more transactional relationships. But also, newer financial advisors run into situations. Now, we all, the goal is to be able to say, hey, if you're not going to do a full financial plan, I'm going to have to, recommend a different financial advisor, right? Now, that should be the goal that we have. If you're going to be a trustworthy financial advisor, you want to do a full financial plan, you want to do, the insurance, you want to do their retirement plan, you want to make sure everything is covered. So that would be the ultimate goal. But the reality is, especially for newer financial advisors and advisors that are working within a framework like a financial institution, sometimes you don't have the option of saying, sorry, I'm not going to work with you. Credit union's a great example.
Exactly.
The members are the focus of that type of organization.
Well, they're the owners. It's a co-op.
Right. They don't want you saying, sorry, I can't help you. So you really at times are forced to work in a transactional state. But yes, this is not a presentation that's going to give you the result that we would actually like to have for all of our clients. But as you mentioned, it's a place to start, and it's a place to start building trust. In working with a client that's not super forthcoming, my natural instinct was to attempt to build trust by showing them how much I knew. So really like reverting back from my consultative approach to a previous generation of salesperson. And this is a common mistake, right? You want to overwhelm them with information to show them, hey, I'm super smart, you can trust me. But this is a bit of a catch-22. If they aren't being open, it's because they don't trust you yet. But it's hard to get them to trust you until you get them to open up. And so that's where this presentation really fit in. It was just a basic, high-level presentation, and it gets the conversation started. And you don't overwhelm them with information. You don't, as I mentioned, just start throwing hand grenades at, oh, let's try a mutual fund. Oh, let's try a bond. Oh, let's try a fixed annuity. And now you've made 3 product presentations, their head spinning, and they just walk away. So this at least will get you narrowed down to something that you can discuss and maybe begin to build that trust. So I would start out by explaining that every investment, whether it's a bank or an insurance company or an investment firm that's holding those funds, has 3 basic characteristics. You've got rate, access, and safety. So I would explain with the rate, you've always got some kind of rate of return, right? It's either a fixed rate of return or you might have a variable rate of return, right? It depends on where that investment is being held. Second is safety. So every investment has some level of safety. Now, that is in the form of return of principal. So you've got return of all of your principal, return of some of your principal, or return of none of your principal guaranteed, right? So you've got a wide range there, but every investment has an aspect of safety on that spectrum. And then lastly, you've got access. So there are some investments that are demand investments. You can walk in and say, I want them right now, and you always have access no matter what. And then other investments have some limitations on accessing the funds. Now, those limitations come in several different forms. Either they have a holding period or a back-end sales load, so a penalty essentially if you take those funds out before the holding period is up. So every investment has some level of access to those funds. So I would draw this out on a triangle. I would write rate, access, and safety at each corner, and I would say, now look, a perfect investment would have all 3, right? It would have a great rate, it would be 100% accessible, and it would be 100% safe. You're guaranteed to get all your money back. Now, I call that the investment unicorn. It just doesn't exist, right? You might as well make it tax-free while we're at it, because as long as you're wishing, you might as well throw that in there, because it just doesn't exist that you can have that kind of investment, right? That's what everybody wants. But you can have any 2 of the 3, and that will give us an idea of what direction we might be going in terms of what investment might be appropriate for this situation. So if you want rate and access, you're willing to give up safety, and then I would circle those two. I'd say, well, that's a mutual fund or a stock, some kind of equity-based investment, and I would write those in, in that circle. And then I would go on to rate and safety, giving up access. I'd circle those two. I'd say, well, this is a bond or a fixed annuity or a certificate of deposit at a financial institution. Now, you've got a fixed rate of return, but you are giving up some amount of access to get that fixed rate of return and that guaranteed return of principal. And then lastly, I would circle the bottom two, which are safety and access, but you're willing to give up rate. Now, that's going to be something much more basic. It's going to be either a savings account or a money market fund. And now, obviously, as a financial advisor, I couldn't help the client with those last few things, but sometimes that just meant that I had to turn them back over to the new accounts people at the financial institution, or if you're an independent financial advisor, you might have to just refer them to a bank or a credit union that they work with and get them what they're seeking. So this leads me into the story of where this really kind of opened my eyes in terms of how powerful it could be. A client had come in, had been doing some planning with his lawyer, and was going to be doing some gifting of assets to his kids for estate planning purposes. And we started talking about, what he wanted to invest it in, and it eventually came back actually that he wanted something that had guaranteed access and guaranteed safety. And so I ended up sending him back over to the new accounts person. But what was really interesting was about a week later he came back in, and I had no idea. This was a commercial bank, and most of the people that came into the branch were just retail customers. Most of the business owners communicated with us by courier. And so I just thought this was a kind of a regular, everyday guy. He was wearing a t-shirt and jeans. Well, it turned out that he actually ran a $40 million commercial real estate company, and he ended up being one of my best clients. I ended up writing a bunch of life insurance, getting a bunch of his investments, and it all came from the fact that in that initial interaction, I had actually turned down essentially business and turned him back over to the bank for that specific situation with his kids. And he actually said that when he came in. He said, hey, my lawyer's been referring me to this financial advisor that he works with, but you've actually been more straightforward and honest with me than he has, and can you do these things for me? And of course I could. So in the comments below, tell us about a time you worked with a prospect that you weren't initially able to help, but later they ended up becoming a very good client because you did the right thing and were honest and upfront with them in your first interaction. If you're interested in learning about the services that Philip and I provide through our consulting firm, Fair Savoir Consulting, you can check us out on the web at fsconsultingltd.com. The Valuability homepage is located on that website, but you can also get there by going to value-ability.com. If you have topics or questions that you'd like us to cover in an upcoming episode, we'd really enjoy hearing from you. You can comment on this video at YouTube or contact us through our Twitter or Instagram accounts, which are both value_ability. And please, if you enjoyed this video, please do us a huge favor and give it a quick like on YouTube.
Dan, before we sign off, a couple points I just want to make on your presentation here today. And what you described right at the very beginning, it was a catch-22. you have a client who really doesn't want to open up, and the tools that you provided here today reminded me of a couple things. One, the old saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Just a simple little diagram, the triangle, it got the client involved, and you were able to say, blah versus saying blah blah, and that is very, very important. The next thing that you did here and I want people to take away is that in this sales process here, and we didn't cover this, but this just got the client talking. Naturally, what Dan would also be doing then is having that open, honest, frank, confidential conversation where all the client's money is as well. So then he can, from a compliance standpoint, we want to make sure this process, we're not shortchanging the process. There is that phase yet, that data gathering, etc., to make sure, know thy client rule and suitability is covered.
Right. Yeah, and that the problem there is that, like, in that kind of situation, it'd be the institutional or that client that just isn't quite trusting yet, is they have a super hard time understanding the context of those questions, in without the fact that they haven't decided to do business with you yet. Right? They're like, why is he asking me about my other money? And, there's that online YouTube cartoon about the day in the life of a financial advisor, where the client withholds information and then later mentions that they have another child when they said they only had one child. And the financial advisor says, well, why didn't you tell me that? And the client character says, well, I didn't think it was any of your business. And so you do have situations where they're just not quite sure why you're asking the questions that you're asking, but you're absolutely right. Once they've said, hey, I want to go this direction, now you say, okay, I have to open up more information because I have to make sure that this is suitable for you. There are compliance reasons for it at that point.
Right. And the last point, as you mentioned, trust, and it's the catch-22, right out of the gate here with us. And what I've learned in my experience is this: if you have people's trust, the details don't matter. But if you don't have their trust, all the details in the world are not going to help you out. So it's crucial that you build the trust. This is one example with a more difficult client who just is not geared or suited to doing, more traditional financial planning or needs-based planning, but just wanted to get some information. This is a great fit to get the conversation going.
Absolutely. And that's a great point to wrap it up, is that, this is not an end. This isn't to replace your, regular approach to financial planning. It's just simply a tool to use in specific situations when it arises that you have a client that's not being incredibly forthcoming. And so with that, we'll wrap up for this week. Philip, as always, I want to say thank you so much. And until next time, we will talk to you then.
Thank you, Dan.